Just getting off us. Always gets me. Getting us started as usual. Starting with our land acknowledgement, we acknowledge the Arapaho, Ute, and Cheyenne tribes, the traditional custodians of the land on which the Police Oversight Panel and Boulder Police Department operate, and pay our respects to their elders past and present. I'd like to welcome any members of the public who are with us today, and then of course to welcome our panel members to our meeting, and just want to thank everyone for being here and just making space for a moment of how much it takes to be here as the community volunteers, and especially in this moment. I know we also have the first hearings for the June 6th insurrection happening tonight as well, in addition to a lot of things on our minds that's just going on in our community. And so I just want to thank you for making time for this work, this critical work for our community, and being here, being present to do that work. And also just want to acknowledge that we've done some pretty rough cases recently as well. I know Joey's also looking into some options for us of support for when we do go mental health support, emotional support for when we do rough cases. And so I want to acknowledge that and bring that into the space as well in that gratitude. For members of the public, please go ahead and direct any comments or questions you have to the Q&A part of our Zoom. Please do not put questions or comments in the chat, and that's just because we're just watching the Q&A, and so we don't want to miss anything. And then panel members, anything that you want to communicate to the panel generally, please make sure to voice that out loud. However, totally okay to drop personal chats. If you need to slip something to Joey or to another panel member, go ahead and feel free to put those personal chats into the chat. I also want to direct members of the public on how to submit complaints against the Boulder Police Department and how to contact the panel outside of these meetings. Our web address is bouldercolorado.gov/services/police-oversight. And from there, you can submit a complaint, which goes to Joy, which triggers an initial review and investigation, and then is brought to the panel. Also, for the time being, you can contact Lipari, that's LIPARIJ, at bouldercolorado.gov to reach the panel with any email communications. I will note Joey and Ariel and I talked, oh gosh, that was only yesterday, just yesterday, we are going to get the panel's contact email address posted to the website, and panel members, for the time being, while we wait to get to our media training, Ariel and I are going to review and receive any emails to that email, and then we'll distribute them to the panel as needed, or respond as needed. So we are getting that posted. Next up, we'll go ahead and just read through our agenda for this evening. So for our June meeting, next up, we're going to approve our last month's meeting notes. Then we're going to pop over to our committees chairs for any reports from our committees. We're going to have a discussion about our retreat planning for this summer, in addition to some media training. And then we're going to have a discussion of our quarterly meeting with the Chief Harold, which we just had this week as well. And then we'll turn that over to Joey for the monitor's report, which is going to include some 2021 annual report highlights. We're going to report on our outcome of case reviews, and look at our monthly case statistics. Then we'll go ahead and do our panel selection of cases to review, and then we'll turn that over to public comment. So,
excuse me, Daniel,
yeah.
Just one note. We had added 2 additional agenda items after the committee reports: the discussion on increasing the number of panel members and the discussion on opening the panel application process. I have that on my agenda here. If you don't have it on yours, I can make sure we hit those when we get to them.
Awesome, thanks, Joe. And yeah, just so it's not on the agenda that is in the June 2022 meeting folder. That's the one I
sent the update directly to y'all, and I didn't replace it on the folder. My apologies.
So
thank you. The accurate one is posted on the website as well.
Gotcha.
The public, yeah.
Great. Let us proceed then. Committee reports, let's start with Community Engagement and Communications Committee.
Victor.
Can I share my screen or co-host? All right, can everyone see that? Yep, okay. So the Community Engagement Committee is headed by Taisha Adams, and I'm the co-chair, Victor King. So just want to give you some brief updates. I will put this link into the chat, but the annual report has been released. I just looked on our website and it's not up there, right? Officially.
Yeah, it's there.
Okay, I didn't see a different link to post. So if there's a better link to post than this link,
We'll get that updated. And
Yeah.
I think we'll have a broader discussion about it later. I just wanted to have it in our presentation so that the public had it.
Yep, and I just put that in the chat for the community members. So that's, you know, just great work by the by this whole team. It's an 88-page document, so it is pretty beefy, and we'll take some time to get into that. We still continue our process for formalizing things and you know, gathering information. So I want to say to the panel members, only 3 people have responded. So I'm not going to rescind the doodle poll, but if you could just search your emails for the doodle poll, if we could just get at least, you know, a few more responses, that would really help. So just a reminder about that. Is there anything I'm missing on this section, Taisha?
No, we did receive some documents from the communications department that we were able, so for that document review piece, the City of Boulder public engagement framework. And we also had an opportunity to receive some different tactics that the communications department, excuse me, uses in their, there's more detail provided about both of those later in the presentation that folks can have after this meeting.
And we're still continuing to meet with Shannon and the city's communication team just to collaborate with them.
Absolutely. And also to align the different events and outreach that they're already doing. So instead of, for example, I saw an update about the report actually in the Boulder community newsletter. And so again, as things are going out, that our panel is brought in the loop if it's related to the panel, as well as there may be some previously scheduled engagement opportunities for the police department and the chief in particular that we may want to dovetail on or just be in alignment with. So that was another thing that we were going to be meeting with them about, but definitely a collaborative spirit, but also keeping our independence and autonomy.
Thank you. And again, just sharing the timeline that, you know, we still continue to adhere to and work on with our continued monthly meetings. And again, really trying to decide or just work together to, again, decide which would be best. And these are a couple of ideas. I know some people didn't attend the communications committee, so you may be seeing this for the first time, but this is why we had that sort of doodle poll, just to sort of funnel them down to some key specific things we can do in the next month or two.
That's just the sample of that framework
Yep.
that I was talking about.
Is there, and I think that's it.
Yeah,
Am I
there was
missing
this one,
anything?
and then there was one other piece that I just wanted to lift up. If you keep going, this slide here, I thought was the spectrum, just for the rest of the committee members. We talked about this during the chief meeting. You know, oftentimes people think of just kind of one way to engage with the public. And what I appreciated about the city's offering here is that they included, they included just different ways to engage, from just informing. And I think there's a lot of informing that's been going on, but I think as a committee and as a panel, we want to really move into that more consulting, involving, just amplifying the depth of engagement, recognizing there are some folks that have time and interest to really be involved and engage, and while others just need to be more informed. So I just wanted to kind of lift up the spectrum of ways that we can engage in things that we're considering for our fellow panelists, as we kind of draft the plan. So the next step is to take all the things that we have, put together a very simple, high-level plan for your internal review and feedback, and then we'll release it for public comment. And there we're really looking for, again, that consultation, real feedback and alternatives, and really making sure that their concerns have been addressed and their aspirations have been identified. Any questions or feedback from the panelists that aren't on our committee? Oh, and I also wanted to thank Hadassah from the Legacy Committee for coming over and joining us on that. And I just think that was a wonderful modeling of how, as on the comms community, I'll try and, come to a governance meeting or legacy meeting as well, so that there are those stronger synergies. But it was really wonderful to have you there, Hadassah.
Thank you. That concludes our report.
Thanks, y'all. And I'll actually hand it over to Hadassah for governance.
Yay. Okay, so governance, we mainly talked about guiding principles and delved through those. We did share a document. I just wanted to make sure everyone has had access to it, can get into it, and doesn't have any access issues, and then we'll kind of open it up for input. We will be finalizing all of the drafts, the input from legal, and then also from final, discussion about just some wordsmithing and some sentences that we weren't quite sure how to put, concisely into what we wanted to say. So that will be at this month's meeting. It will be June 15th, coming up next week. And so that is, again, open to the public, is welcome to comment. We definitely welcome input. And otherwise, we expect to be voting on our guiding principles at next month's monthly meetings. So if there is any input, we would love to see it and hear it. Thank you.
Thanks, Hadassah. And I'll pass it over to Martha for Legacy Committee.
Okay, so I did not create a fancy little presentation, but I can share the email that went out with our notes. Essentially, we were able to boil down the dates and times that we're going to be meeting. Can you see my screen or no? No, let me see. Oh, I have to be a co-host or something.
Just sent it to you. You should see it come through.
Okay. I think it's this. Okay, can you see that? Yes, no?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So this was just kind of our notes from when the legacy met. We established the meeting times. They're going to be the 4th Thursday of the month. So the next one's not going to be until the 23rd. We talked about potential community meetings, information sharing. We considered piggybacking off of the community or meetings, but there was a little bit of debate because that hadn't happened yet. We've had like 3 now meetings with the chief and none with the community. So we were wondering if we could just piggyback off of something that's coming up, like the Juneteenth celebration is the most recent thing that we're talking about that is imminent, Boulder Creek Festival. And then, oops, this one is a typo, so let me fix that. Some potential topic points that we discussed were just based on some of the case review items that have come up. And the one that we liked the most involved the treatment of youth and youth with special needs. So we were hoping to bring that to the floor tonight to be voted on. And there were specific instances that we wanted to touch on. A few other candidates were times guns were pulled by an officer in plain clothing. The annual report came out and we discussed that a little bit. And then data maintenance. We got like very technical about data since we have such awesome data people in this particular group. So we did, gosh, all these typos do not get caught in the first time, but I'm fixing it now. There's a general topic we'd like to investigate and know more about that. One of the bigger things was we talked about a comment box happening to be on our website. And hopefully that can be captured tonight, just so that there's a quick, immediate, and direct way to receive feedback quickly. That doesn't necessarily go through, you know, the process of email and all that, all those items. So that's the quick and dirty of it. And we're open to questions.
The only other thing I would add, Martha, is just the so we kind of talked about like the general process based on like the way that we would get data or the way that we would do stuff is like we would figure out like a, you know, consensus from community, whatever, there'd be a topic selected. We would get a collection of all of the incident forms that are filled out associated to those types of things. And then we can also then request the types of data. So once we have a look at the types of information that is gathered related to that type of an incident, then we can kind of better formulate the question that we're after, and then ask directed questions for the data analysis and for the meta analysis and that kind of stuff. And so that was kind of what we're thinking so far, just kind of to elaborate on what Martha said. And sorry, Taisha, go ahead.
No, that was awesome. And yes, agreed on how do we build on what the events that are already existing. The question is what collateral are we going to give? What are our key talking points around that? So there's some other considerations around that, but happy to maybe try and co-schedule. I love the, you know, obviously community forum was something, or just a meet and greet is what we're going on. But again, we need to know what dates where people are available to be able to do that. So I'd say scheduling is just a major issue, Joey, that we could use some administrative support in my opinion, because again, it's just, it has presented itself to be a barrier, even when we were trying to identify a date for the retreat. Right. So again, I just feel like we just need that additional support, not only mental health support, which is wonderful, and I appreciate that, but also just this administrative support as well around the scheduling.
Can I jump in, Taisha, and ask how you envision that support taking place? Because
so I can
just like what you mean by that.
Okay, I'm happy to. So as some of you know, I also have the honor of serving on Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, similarly providing, you know, obviously this is a different topic, but for our commission, there's actually like administrative support identified, like an actual staff person that works and does the meeting notes and does, you know, has just been incredible as it relates to logistics and meeting planning and all of those things. And it really takes off the that incredible amount of work to allow us to really focus, again, because we are volunteers. And I know there is a stipend, but as you know, we've discussed, that stipend doesn't even, you know, scratch the surface of the amount of work that we actually do. And so wanting to honor our time and recognizing that we aren't employees, but there's a lot of work that needs to happen, especially on the front end. I am actually envisioning, you know, in some administrative support. It could be a high-level intern or a graduate student interested in criminal studies. It could be somebody who's already on the Staff, again, I don't know. And that's why I have been asking about what is the budget for our panel, not only for our committee, for the outreach. So if we're going to be doing events and those kinds of things, who are, how much, we need to know kind of what our, what our budgets are, or what the expectations for the type of levels of supports that we're offering. Was that helpful?
Yeah, I think that's definitely helpful in terms, I think the budget stuff and everything is definitely an area where we have not clarified. And so I agree that that's something that needs to be done and kind of distributed amongst the members of the panel for everyone who knows. I will say that in our meetings with the co-chairs and with Joy, we have discussed the fact that administrative support is going to be limited, right? Because this is a volunteer panel, and distributing city resources here, paid city resources here, is not something that other panels and other city boards are getting. And so that, I mean, is something that might be a bigger problem in and of itself, but there is going to have to be a level of us stepping up and managing within and utilizing Joey and having Joey help, but also know that our resources are limited and that this is still a volunteer group. And so having someone who's going to run our calendars and our full-time schedules, that's just realistically, it's not going to happen. And so I think,
I'm sorry. I just want to say, like, I understand what is available now, but what I'm offering, and actually the commission is also voluntary. We actually receive less compensation for the commission, which has 2 full days every month. So these things aren't unprecedented. I guess what I'm saying is because we're the first, people, maybe they didn't realize how much effort this was. Perhaps this could be resolved by expanding the number of panelists so that there's more people to absorb all of the things that we need to do. So again, I'm just open to, and I just wanted to offer that this is a barrier. And I also would be, I also would love, maybe we could do a panelist survey around just our feelings and reactions and recommendations so that, we can have, instead of it's just me talking or just you, we really can have the full feedback. I think it's also something when we talked about having our meeting with the city council and some of the other just structural things that we are experiencing based on this initial panel. So again, I recognize this, this is a broader conversation and maybe it's a opportunity for an agenda item at another time. But in the interim, I did just have a couple of topics that I wanted to add for consideration for the legacy. And I was just also, so I just wanted to lift those up. But again, I understand that we have limits. At the same time, if this is a priority for the city, and again, this isn't like any other panels, right? This panel is very specific to a unique piece of work that this city has never even attempted before. And so again, if we really want to do something with integrity, we really need to have the resources to be able to sustain that. So I'm happy we're collecting the hours that we're working, et cetera. But I hear you on what our limits are, but I also just want to, again, as a taxpayer in this city and wanting to see this incredible work prevail, I would be remiss if I didn't ask for these additional supports that I think would really help to strengthen the the panel. Thank you.
I can jump in just really quick on this. I think there's 2 components, and Taisha, for example, with the expanding the panel size, that's something we are taking to city council. And so there's this question of the growing pains for sure. How do we do this work? What are the resources for that? I think for the moment, to get through the short term into what Ariel is saying, and I think for all of us, if we have discrete administrative tasks, I think we should go ahead and make that ask. And so Joey's role, largely Joey is our panel administrator in many ways. And one of the reasons we, when in like meeting notes, we asked Joey not to take meeting notes, because we had a conversation about subjectivity and maintaining his, he's the independent monitor, we're the community panel. And so that's why Cindy's here. And so if we can identify those discrete, hi, Cindy, thank you for being here.
I hear you. I will definitely, I'm not asking for every time, but it's,
Totally.
We've taken a year to do the retreat planning. So, I mean, I'm not, this isn't out of nowhere. This is a pattern that I'm seeing, and not just with one person, but I've seen it with multiple people. So that's where I'm happy to have Cindy. I'm happy to continue to work. But again, I'm here from the city to, volunteer. And again, I don't want to set a precedent up for other panels to be able, to not be able to do the work at hand because they're unable to get it. It's just too much. So
Totally.
Thank you so much.
And that's where every panel member, if you have a discrete administrative task, like you're like, you know what, I need someone to find the date that 7 panel members can meet for, the retreat or everything, send that to the co-chairs and to Joey. And if it's something Joey can't do, then that's something for us to problem solve on. So yeah, any of those, yeah, if you have a specific administrative thing, and that's going to be most helpful too, if we need to expand administrative support, to have that list of like, well, here's the 10 things, that we couldn't get done ourselves, and you look elsewhere. Yeah.
Great.
And I also, Chico, I do see your hand too. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight what Martha said, that whilst we are cognizant of the fact that would love the community input on legacy issues to review, one of the issues we brought about was, and which we are bringing to the larger panel here for possibly adoption as a research item, or that we can look into, is the treatment of youth with special needs and mental health. So to kickstart our work as a legacy panel.
And acknowledging too, that came out of a case review we did as well too. Yeah.
I think maybe it was mentioned that it came across in 2 different ones.
Yeah.
At this point. And so there's been a minor trend that we've noticed, even, within the panelists that were there. I mean, it's not that many cases and it's already a trend. And so, do we want to go for a vote?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize we were voting right now. Because if there's
no.
other things because remember we had talked about putting together a list of all of the different reviews and kind of categorizing what type it was, so that we can kind of see those trends over time. Because I know that use of force continues to be an issue, as well as I would even want to, just if we were going to stick to the mental health support, I would actually expand that from juvenile and adult, because we've also seen a pattern of incidences that happen with adults at night, and the crisis unit is only available during the day. So I just wanted to offer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Taisha. Yeah, and I think the idea, thank you, Chico, for raising that. And I think the reason was we kind of just wanted to have something that we started working on while we gained more input from community and gained more, because the reality is a meta study is probably going to be, a couple a year. And so we want to kind of raise that up. But
well, and I like it, Hadassah, because it gives us something to talk about when we get to the meet and greet. Like, it gives us something to engage on. I just feel like oftentimes, going back to that inform different ways of engagement, oftentimes you go to these meetings and it's only inform. It's never an opportunity to really consult and collaborate. And so that's why I really love having these topical items that we can kind of bring on a quarterly, or, again, I would also love for y'all, if there's an interest in exploring, like, how frequently are we talking about topics? And, again, as we're kind of getting the first one off the bat, but really excited about the topics that were raised. I think the juvenile component is absolutely relevant. Thank you.
So I could ask it again. Can we take it to a vote about the Legacy Review Committee initiating with potentially its first item specific to juveniles and treatment of people with mental health items?
Second.
That's emotional.
All right.
Second. Ariel.
Just a point of clarification though, Martha, it sounded like you said for juveniles and mental health items. So does the mental health items include adults, or is it the intersection of juveniles and mental health? I just wanted to clarify for the vote.
I think because there doesn't exist anything right now with specifics to juveniles, I do think that should be the concentration, but we are open to exploring where the data and information takes us. I would be comfortable doing that, but I think for purposes of the Legacy Review Committee, it was, I think there's 3 specific instances that involve juveniles in particular that were the discussion point. If the data, you know, share something different, we're happy to like incorporate that as well. We just wanted to be working on something to start
Okay,
something.
thank you.
So with that motion made, Ariel second, all in favors, hands up in the screens for us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is a majority. Thank you much. Done and done. Thank you, Legacy Committee. Thank you, all committees, getting the work going. Like I did say, and that's actually our next part of the agenda. We are, so yeah, we'll just move straight into it.
Can I actually get
Yeah.
one vote for the comment box? Because I thought that was genius.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, I would just like us to, remember we had talked about just thinking about, I mean, right now our website needs a lot of different things, so I'm just not sure. And the other question I had with the comment box is that it has to go somewhere. So I think it would still come to us via an email. So I just wasn't sure. I just wanted to get some clarification around that.
Martha, would you be comfortable, if people need clarification on this, writing maybe a 1-paragraph proposal and sending it out to the panel of what you kind of are envisioning for it and how it function? And then we can vote on it over email. Is that doable for you?
I can do that. It is totally doable.
Cool. I think that's
Thank
great.
you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks, Ariel. Sorry, did I cut you? Was there anything else from the Legacy Committee? I did not mean to cut you off, Martha. Apologies.
That was it. It was.
Thank
we
you.
wanted to get votes on it just so that we could go in a direction.
Thank you,
All right,
Martha.
I did want to just bring up one topic that was discussed around supervisors. And there's kind of been a trend as well around just some supervisors not sustaining incidences, but acknowledging that an incident happened. So in their report, and that's happened at least 3 times. So again, I'm still fine with the vote of starting with the youth and mental health intersection, but I definitely wanted to lift that up. It was also something that we discussed in the chief conversation as well. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think the one thing that, you know, we definitely would like to see some training or some documentation in the future about like what are the requirements for being a supervisor, being a trainer, et cetera, et cetera. And then kind of, we were hoping to, you know, we'll see what questions that brings us after that training. And what, you know, where we might want to go with that.
I mean, is that legacy or is that more governance? Because I feel like that is happening throughout all the cases.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I
how far
think-
back does this go?
Yeah, I think that's why it would start with us adding that training to our governance, you know, like in our education requirements, we want to see some training, we want to get some collaborate. And then also, I think then it does expand to communications with the chief, with the PD, you know, maybe that is at that point, we have more directional questions of what we can ask in terms of what research we want to do with legacy. I think that's, in my mind, the route, but
I think that's a good approach because it feels a little bit more investigating a current process so that we understand it, and then so that we can bring that to bear on future cases and potentially a policy change. And so that's why I wonder, you know, in the sense of the legacy committee, looking at past data, it's almost that we know exactly what we want to investigate and the challenge we've seen, so we can make a specific recommendation if that sounds right. And so it does seem like something that, you know, the panel as a whole wants training on, and then to discuss on what we do with what we know. other thoughts? Final legacy committee questions? Awesome. Thank you all. Thank you, committee chairs. And so next up on our agenda, kind of precedent for our committee work, is having a discussion on increasing the number of panel members. And so Ariel and I had a preliminary conversation with Joey yesterday, and where we kind of landed, Ariel, Joey, feel free to jump in if I wander astray from our conversation. But we talked about was approaching city council pretty soon, because next up on our agenda, we do need to open the application process since Jen left and she was our last alternate. So we want to approach city council, and what we were thinking is adding 2 panel members. And so we'd be moving from a panel of 9 to a panel of 11. And this was something, Joey, my understanding was this was in the preliminary discussions about what we might become. The question was, should this be a 9-person or 11-person panel? And so it's not outside of the realm of what's already been discussed. I think we can come to that conversation very clearly with the last year of saying, look, we've been at this a year. Clearly we need, it's actually an 11-person job, not a 9-person job. In particular, I think Joey made a really good point yesterday about quorum, that if we add members of the panel, then it's a higher number of panel members that have to be present for us to meet quorum. And that's one of the challenges. But I think in particular with our committee work and our review work, our review of cases, it seems clear, I think, to all of us that additional hands would be really supportive, in part because a lot of us are actually doing double, if not triple duty, attending committee meetings, doing committee work, and that may not be sustainable for future panel members. It may not be sustainable for current panel members, and I want to make sure we make room for panel members, that no one feels pressured to do more work on committee work than they can or than we're asking of, and that's an area to fill in. I think that's the gist. Joey, did I miss anything? Ariel? And so we just want to open that to discussion with y'all.
Jen left. Like,
Yeah, Jen
email or something.
I found out last week, and my understanding is no hard feelings or it's Joy, maybe you can speak more too.
Sure. Yeah, I just got an email from her. Must have been about a week and a half ago now, saying that she had just come to the conclusion that she felt like she had too many commitments, and she was overcommitted and sort of couldn't give her attention to the various things that she was involved in. And so with her regrets, she decided she had to withdraw. So she was our last alternate. She filled a spot that had been opened. And so now we have this question of how soon do we want to start the application process? Both for if you all decide to expand it to 11, but also to fill our current open seat. So yeah, it was unfortunate to lose Jen, but she did contribute quite a bit in her 2 months here in terms of perspective and input. So it was a big loss.
I'm just going to jump in here too. I think something also with potentially expanding the panel, which I think is really important, is thinking about the transitions of panel members, of kind of exactly what Martha just said, of we don't even know her yet, or is there an email? I don't think we have a system right now for what an onboarding and offboarding of a panelist looks like. And I think that's something that as co-chairs, Daniel and I can work on with Joey, but also with the panel too, getting your guys' input about what you want that process to look like. Do you want there to be a level of formality? Are we trying to have a welcome event? Are we trying to just have a welcome email thread? Are we trying to have a goodbye event? Are we trying to have a goodbye email? Some level of systems, because I think that's something that's come up with when we've lost panelists this year, is that it just feels kind of disjointed, and then we just kind of move on, in my opinion, at least personally. So some kind of process, I think, is something to consider, not only for training, but also just for the cohesiveness of the panel and how we interact with one another. Taisha?
I thought that was something that we had discussed, that the governance folks, when the governance and education committees merged, that they were not only doing the training, but onboarding. Was I mistaken in that?
Hadassah's nodding.
No, that's correct. Yeah, we that's the idea, is that we are going to be implementing some sort of training plan, and to be honest, we've been focusing on the guiding principles and bylaw amendments, but we will definitely add it for the agenda for this next month. We also have a couple of other procedural things, case reviews, things like that, that we, some procedures in terms of how do we want to do that. So we will be digging into some of that.
And maybe thank you, Hadassah. And to that point too, into what Ariel was mentioning too, just with the co-chairs, we're also working on one of my upcoming tasks is to draft out kind of just a panel member manual of like the thing, like how do you get a Zoom meeting set up, or just really super basics of things. And it's something then that we just add to as we go into, like Ariel's point, it's like, oh, when someone comes on the panel, we want to do this. When someone leaves the panel, we want to do this. Just small notes about that as well. Less about the official process of training, which I know, thank you, Hadassah, y'all are working on, and more of just kind of those pins in the process of how we want to do things. And to acknowledge too that we've had a lot of turnover in the last year, so we're feeling a little surprised and off foot. I think we can embrace feeling a little off foot, because it's been a lot of turnover, and that's something too as we go into the application process, is to be really clear about this commitment and what we're asking people who sign up to do this work are going to be to hopefully reduce that turnover going forward. Yeah, Martha.
I am able to volunteer if I can get the language from the last recruitment cycle. I can update it with kind of like the actual time constraints that we've encountered and seen, just so that folks know what they're signing up for, with the actuality of the time commitment settings to then present, just so that hopefully we can have that out like maybe before.
Yeah. And we're going to also thank you all for updating your count me-ins as well. That's something we're going to look into. That's going to be really important too, just seeing that kind of like the moving average of all the time we do as well. Victor. And
I'm all for expanding the panel, and also letting folks know what they're getting into now that we actually have an idea of what that looks like. So I'm all for the expansion.
I guess I should ask, does anyone have any reservations or concerns about expanding the panel?
The only concern I have is that it would change up the quorum numbers, and it's hard enough to get 9 people anywhere for scheduling.
Absolutely, Martha. Yeah. Taisha, and yeah.
Again, I think that getting 9 people during this day and age is also a Herculean effort. So if we can do that, we can get 2 more, and it also goes to the commitment of those people. However, I also would like to ask for an increase in the backups. So I think we only have 2 backups right now, and I would love to increase that to 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Taisha. Yeah. And so, not to close this conversation, but to move it forward in the agenda, the next item is talking about opening, when we want to open the panel application process. And so, of course, in our ordinance, that also means, we need to work to identify the 2 nonprofit organizations, community organizations, that we are going to bring representatives on to the selection committee. As far as timeline goes, I'll just touch briefly on that. We were thinking we could go ahead and start moving on with City Council about increasing the panel, while also moving on getting applications open, because those things aren't dependent on each other. If we get turned down or turned up, it just depends on the number of people we ultimately accept to the panel. And then, of course, selecting those nonprofits, we just need to have them selected before we start the selection process, so we can start communicating, start our outreach to actually collect applications, communicate expectations. All of that stuff can begin at the same time, as well as selecting those organizations. As far as timeline goes, what Joey and Ariel and I had talked about yesterday is it's kind of a as soon as possible situation, because we are a panel of 8 now, and our ordinance dictates a panel of 9. And so I think, you know, Joey, we were talking about hopefully having those members in place by the fall. Yes.
The new member to fill
New
Jen's seat.
members. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the next step would be you all sort of maybe taking a vote to direct me to engage with the city council process to increase to the 11. Let me start that, get a sense from the council and the council staff how long that'll take to get through. And once I can give you that kind of time frame, then we can start thinking about sort of when we get the messages out. But yeah, I think, like you said, as soon as possible.
And we could start working on those messages now as well.
Correct. Yeah. And we have, as Martha alluded to earlier, we have a set of documents and press releases and emails and stuff from that time period. And so I can sort of resurrect all those, share them with y'all, and kind of build off of those, so we're not inventing the wheel anew.
Just make it a little bit better. Chico, you had your hand. Or did you?
Yeah, I had my hand, but Joey has addressed it, because I thought maybe they're increasing the number needed. We needed to vote on that. So Joey raised that. So that's fine.
I mean, so in that case, if there isn't any further discussion, I'll just go ahead and make the motion to direct the independent monitor to approach city council about increasing our panel by 2 members to a total of 11, and to increase our alternates from 2 to 4. Is there a second for that? Martha, yeah.
I second.
Thanks, Martha. All in favor, hands up. Boom,
Let me just
shash.
give you all one point of clarification in case you want to consider this for the vote. We had 3 alternates this
sorry.
first time around, and we went through all 3 of those. So if you all want more, I mean, 4 would be good, but I just wanted to make sure you all had that information, that we actually went through 3, not just 2, in case that affects how many alternates you want to have ultimately.
Yeah, Taisha, I see your hand.
Oh, no, my hand was voting
Oh,
yes, but
Yeah.
but now I'm back. So and now I'm contemplating that question. I don't want to have so many alternates. I still feel like 4 would, if we had 4, would be, that takes us for the whole year. And I don't know, other thoughts. Also, aren't we supposed to have a student one?
So currently Chico's a student, and wasn't someone else currently
I
or
was
recently a
one.
student?
I think
Ariel?
I was a student. No, not anymore.
Yeah. I also
Awesome.
think that
Jen,
Sasha was actively in law school.
Sasha was, and Jen was as well. But that raises a good point. Now that Chico's no longer a student, Ariel's no longer a student, we should, in this next round, make sure we're putting some focus on getting 2. It was 2 student seats.
And the 2
Yes.
students only serve 1 year. A student serves a 1-year term, correct?
Oh, right.
So we should
Yeah.
be recruiting every year for 2 new students.
Okay.
We have always had 2 students on the panel, just because apparently we're all very scholar. By the way, I'm a student again right now, so in analytics, so getting my MS. But to the point of it, I am a full-term panel member who wasn't identified as a student, and so those 2 seats for students that are 1 term each, those we should be recruiting for every year, and so that should be part of this process. Is 2 students serving 1-year terms, and then everyone else is serving them the full 3-year term.
And the students can also do, their term is 1 year, but they can do 2 terms. So for a total of 2 years.
So my question is also then now changed. I almost feel like we need 2 recruitments or application streams. I mean, I would love to have at least two, and then two student backups, and then three or two to three full panel backups or something like that. I don't know. Other reactions from that? I didn't realize that that was the status of where we were with that.
And you're saying specifically identifying student alternates.
I mean, like we actually, because yeah, I think we're one down.
Yep.
I mean,
yep.
one, it's kind of, it's a little fuzzy, and it's the summertime. So I'm almost wondering, like, this might be a good time to be recruiting for students because the school year's ended and the new fall has, is beginning. So it aligns with the school year and not with the calendar year.
Yep.
And by student, we're talking college student,
Correct, yeah.
18-year-old high school student. I don't know. That's what I'm trying
Yeah,
to.
what are the rules, Mark? I mean, yeah, what are the rules on that? Is it like, does it say, what's the ordinance say?
It
Does
does say
student?
Institute of Higher Education.
So it could be undergrad.
Tariff governance for the win. Higher ed. Got it. Yeah, so I think for sure what that means then is this recruitment cycle, we're doing a full recruitment cycle for students and for full panel members. I think that does put a note in for all of us that next year we may need to do just a student recruitment. And in our plans for recruitment, keep an eye on that. Just needs to happen more frequently than the other members. But I think we're covered then for this cycle. So panel members, to Taisha's point about identifying alternates specifically for the student positions, and Joey's notice of that we'd be moving from 3 to 4. Do we want to stick to 4? Asking city council for 4 alternates? And then I think it's up to us to identify how many of those are students and not once we get to the selection process. 4.
It might be good with up to 5. Is that, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there could be some wiggle room. And similarly for the nonprofit organizations for the selection committee, does it say only 2 or at least 2?
I think it says specifically 2.
Let's see if there's any wiggle room anywhere. All right, go ahead.
So 5. Do you want to someone put a motion out for 5? I can put a motion out. Do we want to amend our previous resolution and ask Joey to ask city council for to allow us to appoint up to 5 alternates? Is there a second for that? We'll just do this with democracy. Thanks, Hadassah and Martha. All in favor, hand up. Okay, so Joey, if you would ask city council up to 5 alternates, and then 2 additional panel members.
I'll get that in process.
It's the details, right? And someday we'll get to work those out in person, and that'll be amazing. Great. And so, yeah, more to come with the application process. We'll be checking in regularly for sure. I'll go ahead and hand it over to Ariel to talk about retreat planning and media training.
Yeah, speaking of in person, retreat. So the doodle was sent out yesterday for dates in July or August. Victor has filled it out. That's it, which is fine. It's been a day, so no expectations whatsoever. I would love to have responses in by next Wednesday, the 15th. I think that'll give us some good time to plan for the end of June. Again, the retreat will hopefully be, I think, in a city space, which we'll identify with Joey once we have a date selected. It'll be from 10 to 4 on either a Saturday or Sunday in July or August. The doodle includes kind of the rough agenda for what that will look like. There are 2 sessions open right now for panelists to kind of grab if they want to. So I would just say right now, if you have a 1 hour, hour and a half hour session you are thinking of, or you think would be really helpful for this retreat? Kind of Taisha, what you were saying about expectations, and I think we actually have an expectations versus reality session, but anything, if you have some kind of, you know, team building or something with one of the committees or something that you think would be helpful, there's 2 open time slots that are free to just kind of grab. And if I don't get volunteers, I'll probably be going directly to people. I think also if we don't have volunteers, we can end up using that as kind of more in-depth committee time, right? So if there's, as we just discussed, like with Hadassah in terms of onboarding and offboarding, should we have a session with that, with the whole panel in a dedicated hour? So there's definitely some flexibility there. The other thing is potentially having our media training there, and that is blocked off right now. Joy, I'm going to forget the details of what we had just discussed with media training yesterday about it might be happening sooner or later. So
The question was, yeah, because it was connected to the use of the email, the collective group email.
Right.
And so I think that where we ended up was, if the doodle poll ends up putting us in August for the retreat, then that's probably too long to wait for the media training. So then we'd like to do the media training sooner than that. But if we end up in like July, early July in particular for the retreat, then it may be okay just to wait till the retreat to do the media training.
Right.
That's kind of where we landed. Yeah.
Great. So yeah, again, with that, then once we have a date set next Wednesday, Thursday morning, we'll be able to kind of start nailing down the particulars. And then the last thing I would say is, I know it's summer, I know it's a summer weekend, I know that those are coveted, precious things, and also that this is something we've been trying to plan now for a really long time. And I've done my best to make sure that the schedule incorporates, you know, downtime with one another also, right? So like getting to go to a happy hour or having like a nice lunch together, that there's time built in for this also to be a social and fun day, which I think, quite frankly, is something that the panel could really use, is fun with one another and not just being on. And so keep that in mind, that I know it's a big ask in terms of time, but that we are doing our best to make sure that it's, you know, balanced and collected in terms of not just feeling like another work day added on. So please rearrange your schedules, do your best to make things happen. If you're seeing a certain date work a lot and you have, you know, something that day, if you can try your best to reschedule that would be helpful, because we really want to get as many panelists present as possible. So I think that's kind of it in terms of that. Next on the agenda, or I should ask, does anyone have any kind of comments on that, or do you want to wait to discuss till after the doodle is solidified? Okay, great. Well, with that, let's do our break actually now, and then we will come back. And I think next is discussion of the quarterly meeting with Chief Harold, which most of us were present at. So back in 5, is that what we're doing? 10, 5? Okay, I'll see you guys back here at 7:35. I hope you have a nice 5-minute break. Our discussion of the meeting with the chief, I think this is kind of just a free-for-all conversation of kind of thoughts and feelings of how you felt it went. If there were topics that you were glad were addressed, topics that should have been addressed more in depth. I actually, my first comment, just I thought the hybrid model of some of us being there virtually and some of us being in person, I was a little bit worried, and I think actually worked really well, that people virtually were able to ask questions and participate, and that those of us in the room were able to bring them in. And so just knowing that for the future, sorry about my dogs, for the future, we can keep that going if need be, and that it works pretty okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, for that period of time, we could have got more stuff done. And it seems like she has a skill to talk and answer questions in that fashion. So it's almost seemed to me like if she could answer these questions beforehand and then we could discuss her answer versus a 15-minute spin on other things. Like each question shouldn't be a 25-minute thing, right? So just to be more professional or moderated to say, look, you got 3 minutes to answer this question. Everyone else in the room got 2 minutes. And so we can get along things and move it along, because it shouldn't take 8 months to ask 15 questions or 12 questions, right? We're averaging 3 questions a session. So that long-winded dialogue is nice, but it's also, that's not what we're there for. So I like to get to the meat and potatoes and really get to the heart of some issues. So an idea is she provides a response beforehand, and then we can discuss that response, because again, we've only asked a handful of questions ourselves, right? And I'm sure we have more than 7 questions from this group. And so if we could say, here's 15 questions, give us what you'll talk, and then we'll talk about, the most relevant ones. It's just my thoughts on that.
I think it's a great thought. I also think we could have a timekeeper assigned actively during the session who everyone knows is going to interrupt. So maybe it's a little bit less, kind of like for our public comment, that it kind of replicates that, right? So someone's keeping time and says time, and then does the same for the panelist responses. Because I think your idea is great, but I think sometimes it could still spin out with someone's, conversation style. And that having that designated person might just be a helpful role to have. So I agree, we can get through a longer agenda.
Yeah, I think we're starting to know her style, right? Like she's, unflappable, can be flustered. Last time she met us, her dog had just died, right? And she just met us, and then she's able to eat and eat food and have a good conversation, right? So she has those skills, but who's going to say, hey, chief, can you just give us the answer, right? So I want to be respectful, but also like I want to get to the other things and hear other things she has to say. And it's a public event, but it's not a media event. So I feel her answers are coming off more polished than I would like in some situations, and not really leaving space for that back and forth.
I mean, I love the idea of offering the questions in advance, then asking for written responses, and I do think that will open it up. I'll also say it was really helpful as we're still getting to know her, to get more nuanced response, to have broad, I think the questions and the pace will increase as we all get to know each other, build that trust. And it is a public meeting, so the public can come, and so I don't anticipate it being an informal meeting because it is open to the public. So I just wanted to offer that. And I will say, just from the positive components, I did appreciate Deputy Chief's
Redfern.
Thank you, Redfern, joining that meeting. We did have a question about are other officers invited to those meetings, and not just the chief and the deputy. I also really appreciated her thoughts on trying to prevent, really focusing more on moving the department more into a prevention instead of where it's primarily responsive, which I appreciated. And she offered up a couple of examples that, from the IHOP and just moving beyond, or we're just going to station more police officers there, or patrol the neighborhood more, but rather doing an investigation, recognizing that there was some limited staffing that exacerbated the issue, working with the business owners to to support the staff, and then to see those rates come down. So again, I appreciated the opportunity to hear some of the strategies that she has, but also the way that they're implementing it right now.
Yeah, I would just say it was interesting, those 2 strategies around homeless hotspots, right? Like those public health issues. She said the IHOP had the most service calls in the entire city. It's the only 24-hour restaurant in the city. So where are people supposed to go at certain hours, right? Or the Circle K next to the bus station. They accept food stamps. It's blocks from the library. It's blocks from all these centralized things that unhoused people can access. So her top two concerns, and we solve those problems, but they're strictly around the unhoused community. So I didn't say anything about that, but that's just an interesting reflection on what's taking up their bandwidth and just how that's, just how I see that.
And she lifted that up, Victor, remember at the last meeting that we had with her, just how much that unhoused component and how, she really was hopeful to have more social support from social services, and recognizing that that's not what the police are there to do, that there are expertise that other agencies have, and, that support wasn't available to the police for she did not have the discretion to use those funds for that, and only for the policing. So I'm hopeful that you'll raise that again and we can continue, and perhaps that's a legacy conversation as well. Thank you.
Sounds like I missed out on a good meeting. Gosh, I have such strong thoughts about how the homeless population is treated, especially because there are so many like innovative ideas, like safe lots or pop-ups where it's one night at a particular parking lot that can be remedied, and then you clean out in the morning so you can have some dignity in the process. There's a variety of ideas, and I still can't comprehend that there are so many dog parks here and there's no people parks.
Okay, any other thoughts?
I just want to support, I think that it's been great having the conversations with the chief the way that we've been having, but I definitely would support having some sort of, and it looked like, she had her questions beforehand, she had an answer written down. So, if she could kind of share with us what she had written, and then we kind of are talking about, the responses and the questions and that kind of thing. I think that that's a great format. I fully support it. Thank you, Victor.
As an attorney, I want to flag that we might get pushback on that from whoever advises her as well, right? That putting anything in writing that's informal, but she's in a pretty official position, is always a risk to do. And so that we need to be mindful that we could very well get pushback on that. And that's going to be if I was her lawyer, I would say don't write that down. And that's just because it's not a formal statement, it's an informal statement that she's making to the panel. And so if that's the route we go, I think we would also need to figure out some safeguards too of whether this is completely confidential, but then it's a public meeting. I think there's gonna be some hurdles we run into with that. And so that's just something to flag, to keep in mind.
That's a really good point, Ariel. And I think you're right that an attorney would probably have something to say about that. The other way it could play out is the attorney could end up reviewing what she writes ahead of time and then like making it more a legal response than an actual interaction with you all. Yeah, that is something to consider.
Yeah. So I think it sounds like everyone's on the same page that they would like to see more things covered in the meetings with the chief. And it's just about how we go about approaching that. And I think this is a great idea. And it's just one we have to see if it's actually feasible within the confines of the system we're working in. Chico?
Yeah, I'm just scratching my head when you talk about the legal aspects, because again, I found that to be quite open, and that if we let her speak her mind, we probably will get more out of her than if you go the scripted route where everything is wrote, Mm-hmm. So we gotta be careful what we're asking for here.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's it could come off as more rehearsed, right, rather than off the cuff in some ways. So definitely something to consider.
One option I would throw out there just for y'all to consider is since you all have expressed this, I can just tell her before the next meeting that, hey, the panel wants to try to cover a lot more questions this time. So they requested that you kind of keep your answers a little more focused and narrow, specific to the immediate question. And we see how that goes. And if that doesn't make it better or doesn't accomplish what you all want to accomplish, then we can try to develop a different method. That's just an option, just offering that as a possibility.
All right, well, with that, I think we will move on to selection of cases to review. Did everyone get a chance to review cases? Daniel looks confused.
I think we have a monitor's report first.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped you, Joey.
No problem. Let me get this set up. So I have, I'm going to be doing these two reports, essentially 3 topics in 2 reports, just using some slides just to kind of make it go a little smoother and clearer for everyone and for the public as well. So you're not just kind of listening to my voice. The first thing we wanted to do tonight for our, we do have one member of the public still with us. I'll just do a quick run through of the highlights of the annual report that's now posted. And then I'll have another slide that goes through our recently completed cases and our case statistics for this past month. So I'll try to do this pretty efficiently, just in the interest of time. But if there are any questions or anyone needs me to stop for any reason, just raise your hand and I'll try to watch all the images too here to see if anyone raises their hand. But just for our member of the public, just some quick highlights in this annual report. It focuses on processes and procedures, all the processes and procedures that have been developed by the panel over the past year, the training that they've been engaged in, the subcommittees that they've created. The report also provides a copy of the Memorandum of Understanding and a description of the MOU that the panel and I signed with the police department that governs when the monitor gets notifications for critical incidents. We have all the policy and training recommendations in the annual report that the panel has made throughout 2021. A lot of complaint data, some graphs and charts so you can understand what, just by looking at the data, sort of some of the contours of what was happening with the complaint universe. And then we have a large section of the report. In fact, the largest section of the report is on the case summaries. So you can actually read summaries of all of the cases, all of the complaints that were filed last year, and what the outcomes were and what the panel's recommendations were. If you're not familiar with our system, we have a little explanation that allows you to sort of track what happens to a complaint when you file it. There's deeper explanation in the annual report about this process, but just wanted to make you aware that that's there as well. In terms of the policy and training recommendations that the panel made, there were 2 around use of force, one specifically around use of force in juveniles, the second one specifically around neck restraints. Then we had 2 other policy and training recommendations around orders of protection and reminding officers about certain steps they need to take when they are verifying order of protection, and then also making sure that victims of crimes, and specifically sexual assault victims, are making sure that they're receiving the victims advocate services and notice of those services consistently. Some highlights from the data from the complaint realm. We had a total of 58 complaints filed in 2021. 56 of those were misconduct complaints, and 2 of those were serious misconduct complaints. In all of those complaints that we received, there was a total of 88 allegations, 88 separate allegations. So each complaint can have, multiple allegations. Out of those 88 allegations, 16 were sustained, which comes to a 18% sustain rate, which is a pretty solid sustain rate. I've seen them range from anything from 0.01% to 25% on the upper end. So 18% is pretty solid. Just some of the data from the complaints in terms of demographics. And we have 2 slides here. There's more graphs and charts in the report, but I thought these were some of the key ones. You can see how the complaints are distributed across the population of the police department. And we did have 4 officers that had more than 2 complaints. So 3 officers had 3 complaints, and we had 1 officer that actually had 5 complaints, 2 of which were sustained. Like I said, there's more charts and more graphs. That's just a little bit of taste, and it's sort of an invitation to our member of the public to check it out. And here's also how you can file a complaint. You can do it directly online, or you can contact me at my email or at the Professional Standards Unit email address as well. And on our website, we have my phone number listed as well if you need to call and talk about a complaint before filing it, or if you just have questions. Any questions or comments from the panel members? Just, I know that you've all seen the report already, you've digested it. Any comments? I just wanted to open a little space here before I jump into the cases reviewed and the monthly case statistics. Any thoughts, comments on the annual report?
I just wanted to lift up the conversation we had in the communications outreach meeting on lifting up, leveraging some of those strategies to elevate and amplify the annual report. I know there was a limited release of the annual report, and in the outreach and communications meeting, we had requested a more robust amplification of this report, since this is the first of the panel, and really how important it is not to follow up and continue the momentum. You know, there was a lot of fanfare when the committee was first established, but this really is where the rubber is meeting the road. And so, you know, I know, Victor, we had discussed potentially, you know, working with Shannon and the department on additional ways that we can lift this up. It may be an interview or a blog or an opinion piece that just kind of lifts up the press release, where our co-chairs, Daniel and Ariel, already identified and really have some of the key points that we want the public to know. But not, you know, I appreciate this first lift. It was wonderful to have it in the newsletter that I got last week in my home. But again, just really trying to diversify all of the ways and potentially to help use some of this information to help recruit new members as well. So I just wanted to lift that up. Did I get that right, Victor?
Okay, there's no other comments. I'll move into the June cases and the completed cases. So just for the members of the public to be aware, the panel as a group, since our last meeting in May, has reviewed 3, or has, I should say, conducted full case file reviews of 3 cases. We currently have, we just went through several that we have now been, the recommendations have been completed by the panel. There's 1 or 2 others we're still waiting to finish, but we have actually 4 that are with the department right now that the department just recently received. And so next month we should have the outcomes of those. But for this month, I can report out the outcome for 004, MI 2022-004. This was an incident that involved a warrant arrest of a member of the unhoused community here in Boulder. It was a call that officers were dispatched to from a member of the public. When the officers arrived, they discovered there was a warrant. There was some verbal and physical resistance during the attempt to detain the individual. Ultimately, officers applied a leg restraint. That part of the case, so the complaint, the panel exonerated the officer on, in terms of the decision to make the arrest, and which was the source of the complaint was about police authority and was it a legitimate arrest. So the panel did exonerate the officer on that, indicating that they felt the arrest was proper. But the panel did raise a concern about the officer's hand gripping the back of the individual's neck for a period of the arrest. I think it was about 10 seconds or so and kind of went back and forth between the back of his head and the neck. And so the panel picked up on that and decided to reiterate a previous committee's recommendation that the full panel ultimately made, and as we saw in the annual report, around clarification of what the general orders manual means by a neck restraint. And so the department has responded to that recommendation and indicated that they are still in the process of updating that language. So that is in the works. When that gets done, I will notify the panel about that. In terms of our case statistics, for the month of May, we had a total of 4 complaints filed. 3 of those were misconduct and 1 was a serious misconduct. Some of these, I think all of these are in your case summaries that you've reviewed tonight, that you'll be voting on in just a few minutes. So far in June, we've received 1 complaint and 1 community inquiry. There are currently 16 open cases. Chair, our co-chairs, that concludes my report.
You, Joey. And now we will go to case summaries. Sorry for jumping the gun. Did everyone get a chance to review all of the case summaries for today? These are all also for May, so great. One sec, sorry, just bringing them up. And then just to remind the public, if there, I don't know if there's any still on, but that these are case summaries, they're not complaint summaries. And so it's just a high level overview for the panel to determine if we are going to move forward and review before kind of getting into the substance of all the other evidence available to us. So our first one for May is MI 2022-011, and this is an allegation of a Rule 4 respect for others violation and Rule 6 use of force violation. Show of hands if you would like to review this case. Okay. And Taisha, that's at the end. Yeah, coming in. Great. Thanks. Joey, did you get that? Perfect. Okay, moving on to, this is SM 2022-003, and the violations alleged are Rule 1. It's 3 counts of Rule 1 violations. So arrest standards, vehicle pursuits, and body worn camera policy. So all in favor of reviewing 2022-003. Hadassah, okay, and those against reviewing? I didn't do that for the first one, sorry. Okay. Thank you. Next, we have MI 2022-012 and an alleged Rule 5 police authority and public trust violation. Show of hands if those who'd like to review.
I would like to review it, and I think we need the items translated from French, if possible, to see what it says.
They weren't, those items, they're not actionable items in US law. And I don't know if we even have the document. She was just kind of showing it to the officer and then kind of walked away with it. But that wouldn't be something that you all would have to make a determination on necessarily, like what was in the documents. It would just be a matter of whether the officer was reasonable in their interaction and decision making. You wouldn't have to make like a legal determination of necessarily whether it was who was legally right.
I actually think it's an access issue with regard to language and language availability to people who are here. potentially.
So she spoke English. It was just the document was in French, and it was from a French court, which wouldn't really apply. But if let's see, if you all send this to a review, I may have to like ask her for that document if she wants to share that. So I can't promise that. I can promise that I will make an effort if you all send this one to a hearing. I will try to get more clarity on that, but that I don't think that document was actually submitted. So I don't think we currently have possession of it. So she'd have to share it with us.
Okay, so let's see a show of hands again for those who would like to review. So this is 2022-012. And those against? Thank you, everyone. Moving on to our last for May. This is MI 2022-13, and it's an alleged Rule 1 violation. So all panel members who would like to review, please show of hands. And against. Okay.
Okay, so just confirming, I have the panel sending case 011 to a panel review and serious misconduct 003 to a panel review, and not sending 012 and 013.
Yep, that is correct. Okay, so before we move on to our last item, which is public comment, is there any other business or items that panelists want to flag or bring up for future agendas, or just things that weren't discussed? Just want to give everyone a second.
We did mention in our committee meeting that the stipend was increased, so I don't know if everyone knew about that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Victor. I can give a real quick update that on the budget front. So we put into the budget requests, this budget request cycle, 10,000, an additional 10,000 for outreach. So that will essentially be our budget for our outreach activities. We raised the travel funds for the NACOL conference we requested to raise the travel funds for the NACOL conference from 3,000 to 10,000 to include 2 panel members to go to the conference. And then we requested raising the stipend from 100 to 200 for regular panel members and to 250 for the co-chairs. So those requests are working their way through. I'm not sensing any pushback, but they still have to go through the full council approval process, which I think in July that should be completed. So I'll be able to report out one way or another. We do have a small amount of funds for outreach activities now, so don't feel like we have to wait for this budget to pass before we can start doing things on the outreach front. But yeah, I do think we're going to get the stipend raised to 200 and to 250 for the co-chairs.
Great. Well, with that, we can move on to public comment. So every member of the public, I believe we have one on, will be asked if they'd like to comment and unmuted to answer. You'll get 2 minutes unimpeded to speak. And if there's an interruption or a lack of connection, the clock will stop. I'll give you a verbal notice at 20 seconds. And then Joey will mute the feed at 2 minutes. And no obligation to speak, but if you'd like to, I think a Pinkney, the floor is yours. Daniel, do you mind bringing up the clock? I have so many tabs open. Thank you.
Just for the member of the public who's listed as a Pinkney, excuse me. If you're still there and would like to, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to unmute. All right. Yeah, I don't think they're there anymore. Oh, yeah. Okay. They're saying thank you. No questions. All right. Thank you for being here.
Great, perfect. Well, with that, that concludes our business for this evening. Thank you so much for being here. Chico, I see you just unmuted. Maybe it's just to say your goodbyes with your
Yeah,
lovely,
just the goodbyes.
the nicest voice ever. So maybe Chico should exit every meeting for us all. So thank you all. And I know we have kind of a busy summer coming up with retreat and committee meetings. So much appreciated. Thank you.
Chico, can you read us a bedtime story?
Really? Have a good night, folks.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Oh.